Hello, everybody. This is the latest Coerver Coaching Podcast, and I hate to be biased, but probably this is my favorite one because it's with one of my favorite people, Jürgen Klinsmann. Jürgen has been a friend for many, many years, but for everybody who's going to listen in, and I'm going to read, but he's got his CV is too big for me, but let me just highlight it if I can. So the World Cup champion, 108 times for the national team, 47 goals, played with Bayern Munich, Inter Milan, Tottenham, Monaco with Arsenal, and as a coach, that's great, I think. Was coach at the German national team in the 2006 World Cup. It was my great luck to have had discussions with him during those times, and then at Bayern, when he became coach at Bayern Munich, I was invited to be the coach's educator with the academy, and again, our paths crossed. And then with the U.S. national team, which I think Jurgen is one of the great coaches that the U.S. have. I wish you'd stayed longer. But I know. That wasn't to be, but honestly, Jürgen, before I start, the US needs you. But that's just my personal opinion. Okay, yeah. So in the pro game, Jürgen, today, it's changed a lot. And I think in one aspect, to me, when I go and watch my grandkids play, and that's playing from the back with the goalkeeper. And in your generation, certainly in my generation, that was kind of unheard of. I mean, if you did that and you were playing in serious football, you'd probably get into trouble. And now it seems to be a feature. I mean, what's your feeling about that? And how they changed it?
I think the back pass rule, it's a long time now that it's in existence.
Yeah.
Changed a lot the game.
Yeah.
In a good way, because it forced the goalkeepers to become really good players as well. And also they need to be technically very gifted too. Which, if you integrate them from the beginning on in all the training exercises and it's a natural.
Yeah.
So always in the old days, they were there just to kind of save the important shots and come out for crosses and then hit it long.
Yeah.
And I think that back pass rule, made it a lot more interesting, made it a lot more fun. But it's a funny discussion that we all have, we football people, because I'm not the biggest fan of playing out of the back all the time. I mean, I like it if you have space and if you have, a quiet moment and the patterns are well working out that you develop with your team, do it. But if you get in trouble because the other team pressurizes you and gets you nervous and puts you under, physically also under pressure, then why not hitting it long?
Yeah.
Why not doing, a little bit old school and say, we hit it long, go for the second ball, look for a target player up front. So I'm a fan of both.
Yeah.
But I necessarily I never would force my team to say, you can only play out of the back, because it's cool right nowadays. It looks better. It's what everybody wants to do. Said no, you got to do what is efficient. You got to do what is really helping you as a team, and if it makes my goalkeeper nervous to play out of the back in that moment, then I tell him always to hit it long and just relax.
So a mixture. I mean, especially if you're talking about kids between 8 and 16, and mistakes hit kids hard, don't they? I mean, I think they hit everybody hard, but that loss of confidence. But what do you think? So I had the last podcast with the Dutch technical director in charge of the national team, Han Burger, and in Amsterdam, and I was talking to Han, and he told me something about playing from the back. He said that he's, I think, Koeman's boss now for the national team, and he said that he was discussing something different with Koeman, and Koeman said to him that one day when Cruyff was at Barcelona, Cruyff put the team sheet up, no goalkeeper. They were going to play Atletico Madrid. And Pep and Koeman went to see Cruyff at his office and said, you can't do this, right? He was, and I thought, well, is this a joke? Not a joke, but are you pulling my leg? Cruyff wanted to play with no goalkeeper.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Johan Cruyff, I had the pleasure to, after my experience with Germany 2004 to 2006 for the World Cup, and then I had time off, and I went to Barcelona and went with him for a whole day.
Fantastic.
And I was just listening, and I said, wow, what a brain. Johan was always ahead of his time. And his highest demand that he wanted to kind of bring across is that the technical part of the game is the most important one. If you have a good technique, if you foresee the situation, if you know already ahead of time what you want to do once you receive the ball, you instinctively know how to receive the ball, what to do with the first touch, how important the first touch is. And that was 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
He pointed that always out.
Yeah.
And that's how he also let his team play. He forced them to play it highly technical and always be a step ahead, be a thought ahead.
Yeah.
And that's probably says, if I control the game, the rhythm of the game, technically have the ball, my players know what to do with the ball before they receive the ball, I don't need a goalkeeper then.
Yeah.
So that was maybe his kind of, obviously you need a goalkeeper, obviously. And the other teams are good as well.
Yes.
It's not that you're going to be, on the professional levels. So, you are, as in Barcelona especially, you are better than most of the opponents, but not to an extent where you say, I can afford it to play a goalie, because as soon as you lose the ball, you just hit it from 40 yards into the back of the net. But he's been an unbelievable, not only a wonderful personality, not only was he, obviously one of the best players in his times in the world. That was him, Platini, Franz Beckenbauer. These were the players in the 70s, and obviously a little bit before that, Pelé. But his brain was a different brain. Johan Cruyff, came up with ideas and designs and how to play the game that it was always 10 years ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
That's why he won all those trophies and was this exceptional personality and this exceptional character as well.
Yes, and I think when we're trying to sort of predict the future game, what it's going to be, it's just a prediction. So much has changed. The fields have changed. The ball's changed. The knowledge of the body and what we do and has changed. But I think Cruyff's point about technique being the foundation, and I think if you take that on, and even with grassroots coaches when they're working with their young players, one of the things that struck me was, and this is just a personal opinion, that it was a matter of the what's next. So, and that had something to do with the space. So it nearly always became a matter of, do you have the skill to play in the space? The bigger the space is, the more time. And I think kids can do that too. And I remember when you were at Bayern, and we had these discussions about the mental side of the game. That like Pielo was saying, you play with the head. Football is just the feet are just tools. This really important thing that I think in Coerver Coaching, I think we've had that philosophy for 40 years, that ball mastery is a foundation, and then that causes a good first touch, that causes more space and time, possibly. More space and time gives you more decision-making. So it's that the link between the skill and the physical and the mental. And I know you was really keen on that mental side of the game too, and that's always interested me. Just tell me about what really got you interested in that mental side of the game.
Well, I think everybody that plays football around the world, especially in the younger ages, realizes that, first of all, the more he kicks the ball around, the more he loves it and the game, and the better he gets himself. It's a self-teaching game.
Yeah.
Football, and that's what I pointed always out. Yes, we coaches, we are here to help. We try to give the infrastructure, we try to give the input, the ideas, we give the guidelines and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a sport, and I compared a little bit, living in America since a long time, to basketball. To the they call them the inner city kids, the kids that come out from bad neighborhoods and just all they do all day long is after school they go run to the next little court and play and do all these skills, all these dunks and all this stuff. So Kobe Bryant, obviously Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, these players, they didn't learn basketball from coaches. They learned basketball playing it from themselves, doing it over and over and over again. And it automatically leads us in that educational approach that with football is that the more the kid plays, the better he gets, the more skillful he is, the more he kind of, the more confident. And now when we tell them, skill comes first, if you have a very nice soft touch, first touch in the right direction of the game, for sure you're going to have in that moment more time to make the next decision. If you have a bad first touch, then you get in trouble. And so often these most talented kids, they got those foundations by playing the game themselves with their neighborhood kids, with their friends. I always said, that the foundation is where you're coming from, is your neighborhood, is how much you play it. Then you add to it maybe club football, maybe you join a team, you get into a little bit of an infrastructure, and you have maybe their first coach, and the coaches tell you a little bit their end of the story, and but your backbone of your career is what you developed yourself already in football, and that's why the Messis and the Adileses of the world and the Pelés and the Ronaldos and all these players, they come from neighborhoods that build that skill level or a big part of the skill level. And then they got into the more controlled teaching approach in the clubs and whatever they do there. But the level underneath, they created actually themselves. Yes. And that's the beauty of it.
Yes. I think one of the things working in so many places over the years is kind of the disappearance of what certainly in my day was street soccer, and probably in your day a more sophisticated, i.e. freedom and playing with your friends, etc. Now certainly today there's so many different. I can see from my 4 grandkids, the eldest one with iPhone, what I do think now is you're absolutely right. If you love something, you want to do it more. When you do it more, you get better. When you get better, you get more confident. I think after we're done, that'll always be. But I do think that now, because so many, and especially in America, so many kids are joining clubs, what the coaches do on practice day is, I think, very helpful, and I think essential that they do. Who might say the right thing? Look at a body of work that is fun, that is competitive because it's a competitive sport, and that's appropriate to their level. And what I like to think after these 40 years of working in this part, that the Coerver coaching curriculum can be something that coaches can bring to on practice day, without sort of saying don't play on your own. I just don't think they've got the time to play on their own. They've got so many things.
Yeah, I mean, now obviously the surrounding of our kids growing up and the players growing up is very different to the previous generations, and so they are very occupied by social media, by their phones, but on the other hand, they still love the game the same way we did, and they enjoy it. It's just a little bit structured. It's differently structured than in our days. But what I admire on the generation of today is how they, over the last 15, 20 years, really adjusted to an even higher tempo of the game.
Yeah,
the higher physical demand, and it goes all the way, obviously, to the top level, the big leagues in the world, and the Premier League probably is the best in the world still, is you got to do that every 3-4 days. So your recovery time is very limited, and obviously there's a certain level of stress, there's a certain level of expectations and of pressure on them all, and they have to still execute it in a very kind of perfect way. They can afford many mistakes. Nowadays, when you make a mistake, as you said, playing out of the back and you make one mistake, a good team kills you that way.
Yeah.
And so they became so, I would say, almost far more efficient as maybe in the past.
Yeah.
In the execution part. And still, when I see the passing, when I see the movement of the ball and all that, I see it's nearly in the top teams I see it to perfection. If you now would compare the games between today and 20 years ago or 30 years ago, it's a big difference. So even if we maybe had the easier kind of growing up stage, we learned it all in the backyards or wherever we learned it and stuff like that. And we thought, wow, we were better off, right? The football that they play today is just incredible. It's just so precise and it's
quicker.
It's quicker, yeah. So that means also not only physically and technically quicker, especially mentally quicker. So in a certain way, I don't know how this then, when I'm going to talk to specialists about that, the brain side of things is, okay, how can your brain adjust then to a higher speed and a higher tempo and a physical higher demand, because that goes all hand in hand, as we all know, and it's admirable. It's admirable. I mean, the top athletes, certainly, they look after themselves much, much better than we did nowadays. Because the Messis, Ronaldos, they play until their late 30s at least and have no problems at all. Top athletes, LeBron James is a good example as well, and many other sports where they are easily in their 30s now, bringing world-class performances. Or look at Gianluigi Buffon, he played in his 40s. So that's admirable, and that gives them actually... Modric is a fantastic example. And that gives, a lot of younger players actually the encouragement and also the hope that, okay, maybe I'm a slow starter, maybe it takes me a bit longer in my mid-20s maybe to come out and shine, but then I still have another 12, 14 years to go. And our generation thought by 30 you're done, 30, 32 at the latest. And now you see, because the lifestyle changed, they look after their sleep, they look after their nutrition, they look after many other things. Traveling is different than it was nowadays, and so no, it's fascinating how many little components play a big role in the development of an athlete. And I think time have changed, but the foundations are still very, very similar.
Yes, and if we go back to thinking, well, the game's faster, therefore there's less time, which equals less space, more or less, which equals your ball touch. There's a correlation between time and space and your ball control, and that's what I've always felt. But then you've got to build a curriculum to do it. But one other thing, Jürgen, because I think I've worked as a coach director in 43 academies, including all the Premier League clubs. But one thing I've seen in the last 10 years especially is, I'm saying boys, girls are coming in, but a little later. The boys certainly in the Premier League are full-time at 12 years old. Now, that means they study their academics at the training ground, etc. Now, the question I'm going to ask is, as you quite right to say, the more you do things, the better you get. The more you want to do it, the better you get. But what's happening is they're leaving grassroots kids who play once a week and train twice a week way behind, in my opinion. And so what can we advise grassroots coaches that don't have the benefit of daily training, like these 12-year-old boys in pro clubs, which make up 1% of the football world? Or these parents and coaches that go out and practice 2 nights a week, what advice can we give them?
Well, I think that they have even a more important role in our society than actually the 12-year-old academy,
the
programs from the professional teams. I mean, their goal is, the pro clubs is, okay, we give them as much training as we can and education, to get them to the best professional player, hopefully. But at the end of the day, it's still only this 1 or 2 kid, every year, if you're lucky. actually.
I think it's 1.9% in the Premier League.
So the percentage of those kids that go through the academy system and then eventually end up in the pro ranks remains the same. I think the role of every coach out there, and that's why I think programs like Coerver and any other technical or playing programs that you have out there are so extremely important, because they teach the kids so much more than just the technical skills and the playing skills. It's about community, really, and when you have coaches being out there and have the kids twice a week for training, and at the weekend they have a game, maybe the kids kind of hook up themselves almost every day somewhere in the meadows or in the park or wherever,
or on the iPhone.
But they're communicating. I think what football really, one wonderful part of football, as we love it, is problem solving.
Yes.
So problem solving not only on the field, as we discussed, should we play out of the bag or not, or whatever. How do I get out of this situation on the field? And that, when we can talk for hours about football, but problem solving also outside
in life,
in the field, in life.
Yeah.
And that's what I love on football. On football, you always have to figure something out. How can I get now out of the trouble on the field and stuff like that? But in life, it means, I have to figure out a way. Okay, I have to understand my neighborhood. I have to smell the street. Is there anywhere danger? If I'm getting in the wrong neighborhood here, and I have to communicate with the people around me. And obviously, when you are with other people, you realize that you are not exactly like the other people, because all of us are different.
Yeah.
And so football, and for me, was always kind of that big learning curve about figuring other people out, other, obviously, then on a professional level, other countries, other lifestyles, other languages, other way of lives completely. And I had to learn, but it's nothing different to what happens in your little neighborhood where you grow up. Is I had to learn to figure out how the other thinks. Why does he do that? Why he wants to hit me? Yeah. Why he wants to steal my ball? Why, as a kid, when they stole my ball, I always called my bigger brother and said, then he called him and he stole my ball, as an 8-year-old, and he ran after the kid and got my ball back. But you got to figure things out.
Yeah.
And this is we remember I was living in the streets and just figuring it out. Mm. But that character transferred on the football pitch at the end of the day. If you're more aggressive, if you're more unforgiving, if you're more physical, because it transfers over from your way that you live your neighborhood
too, right?
And focus too, and also
concentration.
Yeah, concentration, but also the fact that you become more resilient.
Yes,
you don't want to give up. It's all your neighborhood kind of forms your life, where you grow up, and that's if football is then your favorite game, or in the United States often it's basketball. Yeah. Then this will become part of your life, and that's how you live your life. With the way you grew up playing that sport, you're gonna, in a certain way, you're gonna live your life that way.
It's so interesting you say that, because Arsene was talking about the most important thing is resilience. Because what we was talking about is how few kids, for example, in those days, Arsenal, but let's say any pro club that's certainly outworked, how few kids make it. And his point was, he called it motivational, motivational strength, and the definition of that, or emotional intelligence, the definition of that was resilience, dealing with disappointment, dealing with mistakes. And you just brought, two great minds. I think that's what you're saying too, right? Resilience, because life is tough. Forget about football, life's tough.
Yeah, and that's often, even on the highest level. If it's now in a under 10 or under 12 team, it's that way. But it's the same way as it's in the professionals. It's Arsene's Arsenal that played that 1 year without losing, or it's the Leverkusen of the German Bundesliga now this year and stuff like that. They were the example of resilience.
Yes.
Yeah, and unforgivingness.
Yeah.
And physically very on top of you too. Besides all the technical skills and the way they played the game, And if you look in every World Cup winning team, and you dig a little bit deeper in that specific team, yes, there were fantastic technical players, like obviously Messi, the last example now, but Messi was protected by a lot of very resilient players that made the kind of sure that nobody will touch our special kid here. But he himself is a tough kid too, very tough kid too, this resilient theme that carries the big teams. I mean, that is absolutely when the 70th minute, I always describe it, and you are dead tired, you had already cramps, you don't know, but I get the ball and I gotta go now. I have the space and I gotta go 50, 60 yards down the sideline and cross that ball in. That is resilience, or running after one and stuff like that. That makes the big teams, and you always have this type of exceptional players doing that.
But that resilience also transfers to life, right? I mean, you don't always get the job you want. You don't get the wife or husband you want. But your point about
it's also absolutely, it's nothing different to what other working environments bring to the table.
Yeah,
you also have to be resilient there. You have to work more than your coworkers. You have to give it an extra level of energy and drive. Every day, even if you're maybe coming to the office and you have, you're in a bad mood, or you had a bad day, or you couldn't sleep or whatever, you still have to step it up and bring out, the best that you can show that day. And it's nothing different to the sporting life.
Jürgen, there's so many parent coaches now, in the U.S., of course, but all over Europe. They're fantastic. I mean, Jimmy, my son, who you know very well, Jim coaches his daughter's team and his son's team. So there's so many parent coaches. They could give their time up, do it, the valuable time in the evenings. Any advice to parent coaches, because they've got their kid playing in the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think that story hasn't changed since decades. I think it got a little bit worse nowadays, probably, that parents lives in a certain way often a bit through the career or the possible career
potential
of their kids and actually harm the situation. I mean, I think the biggest advice is step back. Let the kids play and let the coach do his little thing of guidance. That he's a guide. And the more you try to influence that now, the more you damage actually your own kid. I was very fortunate. My dad always came to the games, never said a word. They never said a word, and so that helped me dramatically. In certain societies, we mentioned the United States, it's a little bit more driven that way because the parents from day one on dream about a scholarship for their kids in a prestigious high school or university. And it drives this kind of parent madness, pushing their kids through whatever particular sport or talent they have in order to hope for a scholarship, because the universities are just incredibly expensive now in the U.S. Nobody can really afford them anymore, very, very few people. So they hope for that scholarship, and that's why they're on the sideline screaming at their kids and pushing them, and it becomes really a very negative, and it becomes stress especially for the kids. It's stressful for the coach that tries his best, as a guide, but it especially is very stressful for the kids, and boys and girls the same way. That's the sad part of the story. So I can only hope that that wherever you have a little bit of an influence, telling them that people just step back, parents, that just let the coach do, and let's especially let the kid do it. I mean, we talked about the connection between obviously the technical foundation of every player, how important it is, repetition, and all that stuff, and then you become a smarter player, better player, physically you develop, and so. But I think that the brain that guides all this element is the most important piece in this whole thing. And I think our generation, we were not aware of that.
No,
but the brain did it, right?
The
brain did the job. I knew where the ball will go. I knew where my teammates will run. I knew that probably 9 out of 10 times the ball will end up in that spot in the box. So I got to be there before my marker. So my brain, in a certain way, unknowingly did the job for me. And now we learn more and more about actually how the brain functions, and how to actually also teach your brain in a certain way to do those things. But in 20, 30, 40 years ago, like the Cruyffs of the world, the Beckenbauers of the world, they was done automatically, and we just had no idea how this all was put together.
There's two interesting studies. Again, Arsene got me interested in this topic of scanning. It's just, I think it's just a fact. Of course, I'm no scientist, and it's just a fancy word for looking, right? But it's a really hot topic. I mean, if you go on FIFA site or you go UEFA site, you'll see 16 pages and 20 years of reports. And there's one particular study from the guy called Dr. Jordan, 20-year study on scanning from the University of Norway, which basically, I'm sort of brilliant work for 20 years he did, but let me sort of do a little summary. He concluded that the players that look the most were the most effective forward passers and were basically, in a nutshell, the best players in the team. Now, and for me, I'm interested in the practice field. I've never really been interested in match day. My whole focus has been on the practice field. So I thought, well, if he's saying that, then the drill DNA, when you actually design a drill, has to then include these multiple options to see. i.e. playing with 6 goals. You've got to look at 6 goals rather than 2 goals. So it made sense. But last week, Jürgen, another colleague of mine, Brad Douglas from Sweden, is doing a study funded by the Eurozone, again from Norway and Sweden, a collaboration, where they're now saying they've done an actual survey, and they tried it on me too, where you look at 4 videos of professional players playing, and it freezes when the player's got the ball, and it gives you 10 seconds for 4 possible options. You pass, you shoot, you run, right? And you've got to answer that. And they've done like over 2,000 surveys on this. The conclusion, they're saying it's not the scanning, it's that you build patterns in your playing day if you played a lot, that somehow your brain retains this memory. And so he showed me the 4. I've got to say I got all 4 even after, because I remember playing 40, 50 years ago, but I got all 4 correct. Now that puts me into somebody who's played the game, right, as opposed to, say, somebody who hasn't played the game. But my point is, when you're talking about the brain, and I'll send you the data because I know you're interested in it, it's actually challenging this notion that it's a number of looks, which are important, of course, but it's saying that you retain the pattern, the memory. Does that make sense to you? I mean, I'm not a scientist, but it made sense to me. It just thought, yes, I'm scoring higher because I remember sometime doing that.
Oh, absolutely. I think our brain is capable to retain those patterns, to create those patterns constantly in whatever you do in life, and now we just know a lot more about how it probably works from all these brain specialists, from these people, these super smart people. Then, obviously 30, 40 years ago, nobody talked about that.
Yeah.
But when you look back in the childhood of wonderful players that we admire, they will all tell you, the Messi, Ronaldos, and the Beckenbauer, Pelés of the world, that they will tell you that all the skills that they developed, they had those skills already at the age of 10. Because they did all these movements every day somewhere in the park or in the playground or wherever they did. I remember I did bicycle. For me, bicycle kicks was always fun to do. I had them figured out at the age of 9. I scored them at the age of... And when I did then, those as a professional player, it was second skin. It was just normal to me. Yeah. I was never worried when the ball came in, the cross came in. Oh, that's a chance for a bicycle kick. That's what I'm gonna do. So my brain, everything that in the execution, had done that many, many times.
Yeah.
It was just normal to me.
Yeah.
And like you would bake bread or you do any other work that you repeatedly done, for many times.
I remember when you came to the Coerver Academy in Japan, and it was such a thrill for the students to see you come into the classroom and sit down. And you're so modest, and you had a notebook and you write things down. But my point was that we showed a video, and I think for Inter Milan, you scored a bicycle kick. Was it for Inter?
Yeah.
It was yes, and we showed it to them. But
they were kind of figuring out, how could this old guy do that?
No? Oh, right, you weren't an old guy. You're not an old guy. Yeah. But this whole idea about the mental side, because when you think about the mental side, it does affect so if your brain actually creates these memories, then it's your brain. If it's decision making, it's your brain. If it's physical, well, your brain tells your heart and an automatic nervous system, etc., etc. So I remember at Bayern, I think you were Cruyff was ahead of his time, but you were ahead of your time, in my opinion. Because I remember when we were at Bayern, we used to go for morning coffees, and you had your notebook, and we talked. But you were talking about the mental side, and I think you brought a psychologist from Canada or America.
Yeah,
to Bayern,
psychologist there. Yeah, that I brought in at Bayern. I was the German team before, and it was a super interesting experience that we had then with I call them so-called brain guys,
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that stuff, what today is known and discussed, and it's more clearer, we did unknowingly in the past.
Yeah.
And I had once the chance to go to watch the Los Angeles Lakers train under Phil Jackson, and spend a day with him, and then I studied a bit, his background and why he's doing certain things, and he was always a coach that pointed out the fact positive coaching. So I think one of the key things, educating our kids or helping our kids, guiding our kids, like in Jimmy's, your son's moment now with the coaching girls and boys and the youth, is about positivity.
Yes.
I think we have the responsibility to communicate to the next generation of players that football is a positive game. It's about fun. It's about joy. It's about emotions. It's about resilience and all these things. But always taught with a smile in your face. Positivity is extremely, extremely important. And I think these patterns are far easier developed in your brain, in the brain of the kids and the players, if you are positive about what you communicate.
Yeah.
If you're a negative communicator, if you are a pressure maker, if you are somehow, not bringing this across, there is no pattern developed.
No.
I don't know. I mean, again, if we ask the brain guys. but I totally believe that if you communicate something in a positive way, that it has a far bigger outcome than if you are grumpy, if you are negative, if you are pressurizing, or
you
criticize, if you are always kind of,
so for grassroots coaches, from the professional angle too, is there such a thing or any advice to build a winning mentality? Now, we can talk about whether at the ages of 8 to 16, winning is, I think it's, of course, it's important. It's a competitive sport. But is there any tips about building whatever a winning mentality means, which I guess...
I think it's something that comes from the inside in a certain way. I remember I grew up in a neighborhood not far from Stuttgart, and we had an exceptional youth team. Actually, 4 out of my under 10 team, and 12 under 12 became professionals. In a very local club, 60 kilometers outside of Stuttgart. And but then there comes the point also, okay, even if they sign a professional contract, do they really make it then? And I realized then after time is that the other guys, obviously my best friends, and they did not make it.
No.
Because inside of them was not that kind of resilience or determination to a certain extent to say, at a certain point I have to bring my elbows out. I have to kind of become tougher, nastier, and all these things. If you say that sometimes in certain countries, they mean that very negatively, but I mean it positively. With nastiness, I mean competitive. I mean, I'm not holding back. I'm going to win this thing at all costs and something like that. So then again, it goes back to you're a child of your environment, and however you grew up, however your parents were with you, and however were your buddies and friends with you, that shapes you at a very early time of your life. And you will realize that later on that, I made it a little bit further than maybe other ones because I had those issues.
Yes.
and so forth. And I think the super interesting part of reading about or watching about, the LeBron James of the world or Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordans or in other sports, top class athletes, Boris Becker, and there are certain elements in them that made them just stick through it and go through it mentally because they just so badly wanted it. So many athletes, top athletes in all different sports are shaped that way, or extreme sports like skiers or surfers, or you just dig into their story, and then say, whoa, okay. Not only in football.
Yes, no. Again, the mental power, the power of the mental side of the game. For kids, Jürgen, grassroots kids, normally around, certainly Europe, I'm not sure about the USA, sometimes train twice a week. They play once a game, one. So if you add the hours, that's so different from kids at professional clubs. But, of course, football is a competitive sport, and the object is to win. But how important is winning? Is there another way to redefine winning to those grassroots coaches and parents, or is winning?
Oh no, I think far more important than winning is developing the person, helping to develop the person alongside the parents, alongside the neighborhood, alongside their teammates, and make sure that, I always said, a youth coach, especially in the younger age groups, has the responsibility to make sure that kid comes back next year again. If that kid is not coming back next year again, you failed.
Yeah.
You failed as a coach, not because you didn't win the championship or you didn't get the results. You failed if you didn't give that kid so much joy that he automatically will come.
So love is the...
Yeah. I think that's the most important part. And if that is there's a right balance, for the enjoyment and the excitement of playing football, then not only they will come back the next season, they will also play good. They will do the best they can do.
Oh, they'll get better.
They get better automatically, and they will enjoy themselves. There will always be winners and losers, because it's by results, and you count the goals, thankfully. Some people came up the last years, we don't count the goals anymore, and it's not that important. It is important.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you want to develop resilience, you need to have goals.
Yeah.
You need to have a result. So when they say now, the 8 or 10 or 12-year-olds we should not count that, and it's not important, who wins the championship.
Yeah.
I'm completely against that because I think you need competition. You need to have a drive for it, a goal for it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that anybody is angry because they lost now today. Might be the parents for the wrong reasons, but I think you need to have that competitive edge.
Should we mention to the parents, because I think dialogue with parents, when we talk about the 8 to 16-year group, should we mention to them that it is a competitive sport, the object of a competitive sport is to win, but in this age group, losing and making mistakes can also be a motivator, which I found in Japan especially. I was staggered. I mean, I spent so long there, but I'm staggered with the coaches actually wanting mistakes because they felt mistakes were the way that the player learned. What's your feeling about that? I mean, is redefining winning, which you have done by saying, if you get better that season, you kind of won. I know your team hasn't won, but there is this pressure from parents and there is this pressure on the coaches to win at the stage group.
Yeah.
And when you're training twice a week and playing once a week, with great respect, you just don't have the hours to have these good skills. So you've got to encourage the love. But how can we redefine what winning means to parents?
I think for parents, it should be the most important part that they see their kid develop, positively develop.
Could you say that's winning?
Yeah, I think that is winning for the parents, Is it for the kids? No, the kids want to win the game. They want to score goals, or the goalkeeper wants to save the balls and all that stuff. But I think if a parent gets a message, especially then after the one season from the coach, okay, we saw our kids develop, maturing, getting better technically, tactically, physically, the brain understands it better and all these things, I think that is a wonderful recognition of the work everybody is doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, more than you should hope for.
Yeah.
But obviously, they have different, especially parents have different things in mind, and they go back to the American society where it is about how do I get my kid in a better school, and better educational path, and they utilized sports for that or other like arts or music, if they have talent there. But there's the goal setting is not the same for the kid than for the parent.
Yeah. So should we, I suppose, rhetorical question, should we do a better job as coaches to try to explain parents everything that you've said that I've been trying to do? In other words, maybe the club should have a parent rule book, maybe before the game, during the game, after the game in the car, for example, don't speak, some sort of rule thing.
Yeah, I think, educational books or videos or whatever you can create in order to have the parents relax more, understand the game better, understand also the role of the coach better, and understand a bit better, what develops actually my kid in that specific sport.
Yeah,
absolutely helps. That's a great idea.
And the other question that I get a lot, Jürgen, and it'd be great to get your input on it, is a lot of grassroots coaches work between 8 and 16, work with so-called mixed ability players. So let's say they've got a group of 20 and they've got 3 really good kids and they've got, 10 okay and 3 that don't want to be there. And it's always, I'm not stumped by it because I'm basically a drill designer. That's what I guess I've been doing. And the question I get is, well, how do you take care of, in the professional game, with great respect to my professional colleagues, it's not very difficult. You've got 16 players and it's quite easy. But when you've got mixed ability players in a group, it's not easy. Well, how will you handle that?
I think it's very important to have, also different levels of teammates. It's important to, maybe in a good way, gives you more confidence because you feel a little bit, okay, I can deal with that, But on the other hand, all the stimulation, the motivation needs to come from the inside of yourself, And when you, we refer to it in football, you play down, you always should play up, If your kid now is a year younger,
yes,
then but his tech is already much better than his entire team, we should play up, And there are, always positives and negatives, where I say, okay, it might be for him football-wise better, he's playing up, but is it camaraderie-wise, socially better to do that? Big question mark, He might get killed by the older kids. He might get knocked down. He might lose the fun of the game. But confidence instead of staying with his same age group, And I think any situation that you come across in football, like in life, playing down, playing up, having kids in your group that are not as maybe skillful as you or whatever.
Yeah.
All that is still development, because you got to develop also skills, not to deal with them, to communicate with them, to pull them up, say, okay, but I come on, we're going to do that, we're going to make that. So maybe it helps you to become a better leader. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, in the top game, we always hope for the one player that takes things in his hands when things are not going so well on the field, Like in the Champions League final, Borussia Dortmund needed somebody after Real scored the first goal to turn it around and say, hey, come on, guys, no problem. But there was nobody there.
No.
Yeah. And so in the youth, in the kids kind of development, it's important to have them deal with completely different situations and issues for them to develop as an overall player.
Yes, yeah. I think one of the things is a question, there's two schools of thought in grassroots football especially, but I think even the young pro level is, do you put the best on training day, on practice day, do you put the best, let's say you work in groups of 5, do you put, or 3, do you put the best with the best in grassroots football? Do you mix them up? So there's one school of thought saying put the best with the best until it gets to anything. So repetition, you can mix them. But when it's full pressure, i.e. opponent trying to win the ball, then put the best with the best. And there's another school of thought saying, no, put the weakest with the best because the best can teach the weakest. Which school of thought would you be in?
I would mix it up. Yeah, I would mix it up. Personally now. Yeah, I think because on both ends, there's a good thing. If you play the weaker against the stronger, the weakers they will maybe develop such a drive and such a willingness to kind of show the better. They know that the other team is better. Oh, we're going to show you today that you are actually that better, that much better than we are. So that could kind of bring them up in a certain way, but also by mixing it up as well. There's a good and a bad to it. So if it was my decision and as a coach, I would one time this way, one time that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes, I hadn't thought of it like that, but that's a great answer on that. We've done the role of parents. So this is then the first part. Are you okay for time?
Yeah.
No, they told me. Okay, yeah. So then we'll go to the second part. So my last question on the kids. So for grassroots kids and parents and their coaches between 8 and 16, you said that the main goal is for them to have fun, because if they love it, they're going to do it and continue in it. And you've given you mentioned the importance that if they stay in sport, it teaches them important life skills. Is there anything else, any other advice that you'd give to parents and coaches of grassroots players? They're not going to be professional players. Even at the professional clubs, very few of them become professional players. So at grassroots, what other advice could you give?
Well, if I just look at the way I grew up and see now obviously how our kids grew up and different places around the world, I think that football was always one of the drivers of your community. So no matter to which level you make it, to an amateur level, or if you continue after college to still play the game in America or in a club, a team on amateur level, whatever, later on, it's always going to be part of your lifestyle. It's always been part of your social connectivity.
Yeah.
So I think you can talk to anybody, whoever, even my old teammates at the under 10 team that I played in my local little town where I grew up. Even these guys are still together today. So there's obviously the school friends that you made because you were together at school, right? We were put together in classroom, and you remain friends, and then they have their every 10-year anniversary or whatever throughout life. I think that football is a very important, or sports in general, counterbalance to the educational life, and it forms you, because it's your friends that make you, it's your neighborhood that makes you.
Yeah.
And I think no matter how long they continue to play until the adult life or even longer, it could also happen actually that kid that was less talented than you were in youth and you turn professional and then your professional career is over. It suddenly turns out that guy that was not as good as you, but he continued to play on a first grassroots level, youth level, amateur level. But after amateur level, he still continues to play and plays at the age of, after 35, you call them the old guys teams, and continues to play 2-3 times a week. And now suddenly kind of kills you.
Yeah.
And this is the beauty of sports, because, any sport, but I think especially football has this huge capability of socializing people, getting people together and respecting each other. And even if you just play in the Sunday league, as old guy Sunday league or young guy Sunday league, whatever age you are, it's 2-3 hours of tremendous enjoyment and fun. And no matter now how your skill level is at that moment in time.
And for grassroots, isn't it important that the coaches also enjoy, because they're volunteers, so that they're not getting paid, and they take their time.
But I think for the coaches, youth coaches in general, it is a fantastic way to explore. If you are capable later on in your life, even if you're a very young person, your early 20s, let's say, and you say, okay, you know what, I do this youth team, the under 12 team or under 14 team twice a week, and then on the weekend we do a game. And so he develops himself skills that he's maybe not aware of maybe becoming a good leader. Maybe will become the way he communicates and to everybody, to the parents, to the players, to the kids, and runs the thing. Is somebody that is good in organizing, putting pieces together. Maybe end up as a manager in a restaurant because he's very creative in solving situations and is good with people in general to talk to. And unknowingly, he develops skills by coaching kids, graduate kids, that will serve him for the rest of his life. And maybe actually in his profession that he's now doing then. So it's I think it's very encouraging and give them a lot of respect and support if you decide to coach kids and because you love the game.
Yeah. So, and this idea that you have to be over 40 to coach is crazy, right?
Yeah. I'll ask the German national team coach. Maybe winning the Euros this summer.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
They have a chance, right?
Yeah, they have a chance.
Okay, so the second part is this thing that Charlie and I have been working on for the last year, and it's I'll just backdrop just to so basically when did it happen? I think it happened 3 or 4 years ago. I was at a UEFA where I was looking at the stats, and so the stats were that 90% of goals were scored from 12 meters for 14 meters, and of those, 85% with 2 touch or less. Then recent stats where rather than the ball, the World Cup stats, the last 2 World Cups, rather than the balls coming from wide positions, they were coming through the middle for first-time finishers. What interests me was that if that was true, then it gives you a clue on how to design a drill. Whatever, 6 goals and you can score, but you can only score on first-time finish. So that, but have a middle zone so the balls don't come. So in other words, that was what interested me. So what, as your specialty position, what I'd like to just discuss briefly with you is this last 30 meters. Where I do think there needs to be some sort of, not specialist knowledge, but some sort of, in my view, games are won and lost there. And so I just wanted to get your opinion on that. Chain of thought.
I think there will be always trends that we kind of mainly throughout these 4-year cycles between World Cups. With ideas of how the game changed, maybe just more recently because of the tactical style of coaches, how they play it, how they defend, and how they figure out ways then to score goals, and there will be, that World Cup will be give you far more statistics about, the goals came mostly through the middle. They came mostly, in the beginning of the 18-yard box, in that area till the 6-yard box, and one-touch finish. And then the next World Cup will tell you, there's a complete trend that people come over the wings again, trying to double the flanks, trying to get down to the end line, or even cross early and figure out a way with, again, one-touch finish through your strikers. Giroud is the perfect example of that, from France, just needs one split second and he had to the ball in the back of the net. So I think that we will always see, I think, in I don't know, I watched in Qatar 33 games live, and we've worked with Arsene Wenger and with Alberto Zaccheroni and many other coaches to identify these patterns. Again, we're talking about these patterns. Okay, can we kind of learn out of these patterns that we should modify our training exercises and sessions? Coming now in the latest trend, again, more over the wings and figuring out, because there's a bit more space, because now the teams defend with 8-9 players in front of the box or in the box, and how do you score then? You saw obviously less goals with shots from far, so from 20, 22 yards, 24 yards, very, very few goals, because there's so many guys in front of you. And they don't let you pull the trigger either. So it is really interesting to see these trends. Obviously now we're in a time where we try to prove everything with data. The probability of the next goal will come through the middle, the next goal will come like this or whatever. I see these things and I deal with it and kind of think about those data pieces, but I still think, if somebody really good decides from 22 yards to shoot and he knows exactly where to shoot, like Messi against Mexico when he in the second game there, then it will be a goal. No matter if you have nine guys in front of you. I think there will be always changes, ongoing changes in football, ongoing trends. Trends will change. We always talked. I remember when I coached Germany in 2006 and we lost to Italy, and Italy won the World Cup with 70% set pieces. And 2 out of 3 goals were scored by a set piece. So now we can talk all the tactical approaches up and down, and we don't like them to any solution because they just waited for a corner kick, for a free kick, and then they kill you. And so there will be always different trends, different ways, different ideas, different player style types, different tactical approaches. But at the end of the day, I always say it's the player that makes the difference, and they will figure things out at the end of the day on the field.
I no, totally. I agree with you with stats. My interest in stats is which way does it lead the practice, the drill design, right? But I do think that one thing hasn't changed, and you highlighted it, that in those last 30 meters, there's less space and time, and you're generally outnumbered nearly all the time. So the opposition will outnumber you. That means if there's less space and time, which then one of the things that you know very well in Coerver, we've been doing 1v1, the toppy 1v1. Now we have 77 1v1s. I'm not saying anybody, please, you don't need 77 1v1s, but in Coerver we built that. And we've actually shrunk that. So we've got now 8 that when you're going towards goal, 8 where you're cutting in. So if you're on a right, shoot it with your left. And 2 going across the goal where you spin round. So from those 77, we've gone down to 24, which we would teach the young players. I still think it's probably too much. So I think we'll bring it down to sort of 8 or 12. But let's say you came to our course and we taught you that. On the basis that there's less space and time, you're going to be outnumbered. One way to create space to shoot is 1v1.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's a topic. I remember when I went to Bayern, you asked me to work with Luca Toni for a little bit. And with great respect, he wasn't the most technical player, but I think he was receiving the ball with his back or running in, and I think you want for him to have a few more options.
Yeah.
But your view on 1v1 and its importance?
Oh, my view on 1-against-1 has always been very big and very, very important, and that hasn't changed at all. I think actually nowadays, even more than before. You are hungry for 1-against-1 players. You are hungry for the Vinicius Junior, Mbappe, for players that take people on and create something, because teams now so rigidly defend, and with 8, 9, as we said, players around the box, and make the space so tight. Right now, in that moment, it's even more important that you have a guy that goes and creates some different scenario. So because by passing the first player, the game changes. The next defender needs to figure out, am I coming out and giving a bit more space behind me? Is everybody following me behind me? And so that's why Mbappe is the most expensive player on the planet, or Messi, because these guys have these skills. Says, okay, there's no way we get through here. There's no way to get through. So I got to figure out something. So this 1-against-1 creative moment is key, and it's becoming far more important than it was ever before. I think there will be, depending on the result, then even a team that bunkers in with 10 guys around that box and parks the bus. If you break that result, and it's then you score the first game, and they have to then come a little bit out of the shell and do something, then these 1-against-1 players even more will kill you.
Yes.
So I always tell the players, create more for yourself, create more options. And you always told me that it's put more cards in the back pocket.
Yeah.
And I tell them, you can need a couple more cards in your back pocket to pass the players and do that.
Yeah.
No, 1-against-1 will be always super, super important.
And I remember when we met 20 plus years ago, that was one of the areas that you were interested in the Coerver program because of our 1v1. And for 40 years, and this is towards the end of my career certainly, but for 40 years, I've been asked this question from Argentina to Italy to everywhere, there's one school of thought that believe that 1v1 have some sort of supernatural, they're touched by something, so they're special. And another school, which I belong to, thinks that you can teach 1v1. And therefore Coerver over 40 years has built this large curriculum to teach it. Of course, there's like George Best. George was special, and Charlie was special in 1v1, and Messi is 1v1. But I still think you can teach it.
Absolutely, it's teachable. It's repetition. Any skill you can teach. It might, maybe because you're not, 8 or 10 years old anymore, where it all comes natural. Maybe you have to force yourself and your brain basically to follow you. It takes you more repetition. Maybe the older you get, I don't know. But as you brought up the example, like when we worked with Luca Toni at Bayern Munich, he knew that I can learn that. Give me more options. He wanted to.
Yeah.
He wanted to get more options. And the same would have been for me in later age. I could have taken good use of more options. No, I think it's always teachable. Every skill is teachable, even in later times.
Yeah.
You don't have to be just in your youth age. And it's important to think about that and add that to your portfolio.
And if we talk about 30 meters from goal, and all the goals that you scored, is there any tips that you'd give to coaches on when they're working? How can they get their players to score more goals? Well, let's talk personally about you. What were the 3 or 4 things that made you a goal scorer?
I think. Confidence is one point. Having the skill set and believing in yourself, and knowing where you want to put the ball, to stay calm when the goalkeeper comes out or when the defender gets at you. All those skills are developed in your youth age, automatically. Not you don't know it, but it's there. But it's also trainable. You can train it over and over again. It's not an issue. I always continue to train 1-against-1 situation. I continued to do finishing exercise all I went for, especially for a striker. You know, when Cristiano Ronaldo hammered 30 minutes free kicks before training and 30 minutes free kicks after training at Man United when he was with Sir Alex Ferguson. And all the top athletes, they will always continue to train certain elements of the game. I think it's wonderful. It's fun also. You enjoy doing that because it gives you an edge. You know? And anybody can do that. I mean, I remember the goalkeeper from Sao Paulo years ago. I became now a coach too. He was the best free kick taker in Brazil. You know, because he trained that in his, and I don't know how many he scored. More than 50 goals in his career, easily. You know, for a top team in Brazil, the goalkeeper, was a free kick.
Well, like
so because it's just training.
Yeah. And what about being two-footed? I mean, as a striker, was that important to you?
Absolutely. I mean, being two-footed, not having the need to put it on the other foot, that's a split second, and it's a goal. Especially when it's a one-touch situation. You know, I mean, I had teammates like Andy Brehme that unfortunately passed away just recently.
Yes,
he did not even know what was his better foot. And now he scored a penalty in 1986 in the World Cup in Mexico with his left foot. And 4 years later, he scores the penalty against Argentina in the World Cup final with his right foot. And he cannot tell you why. He said, no, I just felt like my lefty or today and my right foot the other day.
And I think that's my dear friend Dr. Peter Bain is one of the world's leading neurologists in motor disorders, Alzheimer's, etc. But he's a UEFA coach as well. I did a podcast with him, and it was very interesting. He was saying we were talking about the Coerver program and the ball mastery part, which is like 106 exercises that you do with the ball on the ground. And you, whenever you use your right foot, use your left foot. So that's the basis of exercise. But what Peter was saying was that between sort of 6 years old and 12 years old, we're talking about becoming two-footed or against the wall, like I did when my dad's garage. I became left-footed because my dad's garage door was bent, and because I'm right-handed. And for ours, the door was bent. It came to my left foot. By the time I was 12, and still to this in my 70s, I'm still left-footed. That's the power of the brain, right? I'm totally right-handed. But my point was that Dr. Bain was saying that it's that age group, really important, 7 to 12, where you can become two-footed. Do you
totally believe that? But I mean, the best thing is you become both-footed by not knowing it.
Yes.
So give the kid so much fun, or I mean, if he plays against the house wall or the garage door or wherever, he just puts hours in there and does all these exercises, not knowing that you actually get so much better because you do only those things because you want to have fun, So it's just doing something for having fun, and then you develop this particular skill set, and that's what I mean. That all these special athletes, whatever sports they are in, they unknowingly develop all those skills very, very early in their lives.
Yes,
but they also their brain maintain those patterns, and I'm sure that if Boris Becker would do a serve today, it would not be the most powerful maybe in that moment, but his brain would know exactly how to execute it, and it's fantastic.
No, it's so interesting, Jürgen. Well, interesting to me, not to anybody else, where a right-handed person, and I used to play the game because if the ball went past me, I was only 9 or 10, they would be, say, Tottenham, and I'd be Chelsea or something. And if the ball went past, that was a goal. If I hit the ball 10 times against the wall, I got a goal. But because the garage door was that, the power of the brain, and I didn't realize it until I met Dr. Bain, because I said, Pete, I'm right-handed, and whenever I played football, I was always left-footed. And he said, well, what? And then I remember my dad's garage door, isn't it? To your point about the power of the mind. Okay, so the last bit, if I don't need it, is something that I've talked to Arsene about, but other coaches, which I into, is about what I think, or what we think the future game is. And so I'm going to start with what Arsene said, and then we can take it on, and then we're done, if that's all right. Yeah. Okay. So Jürgen, it was very interesting. Arsene recently for FIFA did a wonderful sort of presentation on what he thinks about the future game, and I've discussed that with him too, and many other great coaches around the world, including I was in Argentina in doing a course and was able to do a podcast with Messi's coach, and so I've discussed this with people that know much more than I do, and I think let's get back to what Arsene said, which I agree, and my colleague in Argentina agreed, was that the game is going to get faster. If it gets faster, there's going to be less space and time. It's sort of condensing it, but let's say we agreed on that, and therefore it seemed to me that with less space and time, and the fact that you only had the ball 2 minutes out of 90, but you couldn't do anything, you couldn't score without the ball, and they can't score if you've got the ball. It all points to a possession-based game, more or less. And I get your point about mixing it up, but let's say, so less space, less time. So your skills in those 2 minutes that you've got the ball have to be precise. If you lose the ball, then you give the other team power. And then getting back to the Future, Cruyff, the fact that players had to have similar skills sets so that they'd rotate, so that your number 5 traditionally and your number 10 might have previously had different skill sets, but they almost have to have the same skill sets if you believe in rotation. So let's say that the three of us, or the 4 people I've talked to, we kind of had a general consensus. Me a little bit more on the possession side, them a little bit like Roy Hodgson, a little bit more on the more pragmatic side, which is fine. But I'm interested in that 8 to 12, so 8 to 16. So I think if you play 10-meter passes in match day, you're going to get more touches. And if you're 8 to 16, that's what you want. So you use match day as an extension to training day. But that's just a personal view. What do you think the future game is going to look like? Again, let's divide it at the top level, the professional level, and then at the youth level.
Well, there are different approaches now from a lot of different federations. The Germans now, they go into 3 against 3 with the very little ones, and 5 against 5, 7 against 7, uneven numbers, to probably create more triangles, to give more passing options, And again, there's the talk about we don't count the results in the very early age. And so they're very, I'm not saying what is right or wrong. I'm just saying there are a lot of different approaches in educating basically the game. I've always been one person that loves the emotional approach of things, make it fun. Make it fun and don't overcomplicate now, the things that you give the players to execute. Don't make it too complicated now in your games. Give them the motivation to, finish off. I think you always should play with goals.
Multi-goal. What do you think of
a lot of
6 goals? Or
as a 5-minute training drill or 10 minutes, it's totally fine. You can play, because then you keep your head up all the time. You look, your visual is different. Your problem solving is different, and it's totally cool. But at the end of the day, I think it's always important that we play for goals.
Yes,
we play for goals, and we're not American football where you have to go over the end line, or to get in the end zone and all that stuff. I also say goalkeeper is very important. There are many now coming up and say, no goalkeeper until the age of 10, 12 or whatever. And then you figure out somebody going into goal. Tell this a world-class goalkeeper of today, when he learned his skills. A world-class goalkeeper of the day, if it's Courtois or if it's Manuel Neuer or if it's Pickford or wherever you would target, they love to jump around and dive around and catch the balls at the age of 6, 7, 8 already.
Yeah.
Now you tell them, no, you're going to be a field player until the age of 12. You say, I have to wait until 12 now getting into my goal. That's my position. I want to. So they are as fanatical as anybody else as the number 9 goal scorer. The only thing I want to do is put the ball in the back of the net. I want to score. If I'm 7 or 8 or if I'm 12, 16 or 25, So I think there are certain elements of the game where I wish, they would not question all the time or try to change for changing something.
Yes.
Just let the emotional side, drive you. And the emotional side is a goalie wants to be a goalie.
Well, it's fun because, of course, Jonathan, who I've known since he was a little boy, your son, is a professional goalkeeper. And I was looking at his videos, and I think his team just got promoted in Italy, right?
Yeah.
And, well, first of all, I can't believe how big he is, but good for his feet, Jürgen.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with all his goalies playing outside, being part of the normal team and doing all. I mean, he was a midfielder until he was 12, and then he switched it because he loved basketball the same way. And then he obviously grew into 6'5", into 195 centimeters, big athlete. But I think the beauty of football is that the kids figure out themselves often, where their favorite spot is. One wants to be a defender, the other wants to run the show in midfield. Yeah. It's a great passer, and then you have the strikers. They badly want to score goals, and so I think we should not kind of put them into little boxes already at the early age and tell them, no, this is how we do it now, and this is how we do it. No, and then the competitive side is, we don't want results. It hammers the losing team. They lose the motivation, and they don't lose the motivation. The kids forget after 5 minutes. Give them a nice snack after the game, and then they forgot that they just lost 5-1. And then they're happy to go to the next game. Yeah, that's again another parent topic. Where the parents have the problem if their kids lose a game. The kids don't really have a problem losing a game that much. Yeah, and so I think discussing the development of the game. Where will the game go to? How will be the modern game look like in 5 or 10 years from now? Now we talk a lot about the usage of data and how does that change maybe the game. Yeah. I think it will change probably some tactical approaches and some approaches of training.
In real time, right?
Yeah, real time. But it will not change the game. No. It makes it sound a lot more complicated. We change the language of certain things, how to describe the game. When we talk football, they use now, words like line breaks or stuff like that. Right. They think, are we now in American football or in hockey or I don't know, but that will be always parts of the game because we love it so much.
Yes, no. So finally, Jürgen, as I said, this is 40 years of Coerver Coaching and probably my last year, but I'm really proud because we're in 51 countries and we've sort of given coaches an opportunity to do a job they love. And so Charlie and I over 40 years have built a curriculum and it's used basically at every professional club now. When I was in Argentina, even Messi's coach brought out the Coerver videos. So special for me to have you here because you've always been so gracious and a good friend anyway. But my parting shot actually is not part. My view after these 40 years is that I think what we've done is create a body of work that between 8 and 16 is probably indispensable to playing the team game well. But I'm biased. I mean, I don't know what you think.
No, I think, what you've done over the last 40 years, you created a whole amount of content for coaches, of ideas, how to teach the game, how to coach the game, how to look at the game. that pretty much no federation in the world was capable to do. So you were always kind of ahead of the topic, because you were not restricted to do it a certain way. Certain political people in federations are, and you have to present something for the different coaching batches that you have to go through, as every coach has to go through. Youth team coach, then the C, B, A licenses. It doesn't matter how you describe them then, and then the UEFA license and all that stuff. So you were an independent program, just offering you knowledge from a very specific point of view, and so you kind of bypassed all the political stuff out there and gave coaches over the last 40 years so many fantastic ideas of training exercises and sessions and drills and how to kind of individualize things, how to put it into the group, whole team aspect, and then the whole coaching aspect. And you should be very, very proud of that. All of you, because it's just outstanding. And when I get asked today, from coaches, what should we do with the kids? What should they do? And I always tell them, go in the Coerver site and check it out, because there are so many good things that you can utilize tomorrow right away in your training session, and very well thought through. And I think how he initially started Will Coerver was brilliant, and how then you build it and Charlie built it over the last decades, just simply fantastic. And I think in a certain way, a lot of kids around the world, at their specific time, crossed Coerver coaching, whatever method, whatever stage you were at. I've always been a fan of the pyramid, because you can change any pyramid, and we had other great coaches in other sports, and like in basketball, for example, where they utilize the pyramid, and then you can type into the different blocks of the pyramid your own version of, okay, for me the foundation is more this, the next layer is more that, so everyone can build their own coaching pyramid with their own beliefs. And it also depends on your own neighborhood where you grow up, in which country you grow up, in which place you grow up. The Brazilians look differently at football than the Argentinians, and then the English, than the Germans, and so on. And you build a curriculum that can work for everyone in the world, which is difficult for a federation. A federation needs to do it specifically for their own country, their own mindset, their own way of doing it. The Germans doing it differently to the Swiss than the Italians, and so on. And so, huge compliment for what you've done over the last 40 years, Alfred. It's been a pleasure learning from you. It's been really a pleasure.
I'm going to use this hand. Thank you. Thank you for